Good evening and welcome to the Executive Scrutiny Board meeting, Wednesday the 1st of February. Do you have any apologies, please? We're a bit thin on the ground. It's rather disappointing, isn't it? Nobody from the Conservative group at all is here. We're a couple of members short over and above them. There's nobody here from Reform either. Late items. I don't have any late items. Declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest, please? Okay. Item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of January 2023 and the 16th of January 2023. You've all had copies of those. Any issues with regard to accuracy or contents you have concerns about? If not, moving on to item 5, the forward plan. You all had copies of that. Any issues around the forward plan that you wish to raise? If not, we're moving on to the Council Cabinet Agenda, item 6. Just before I take this, I know that there's been concern raised by many members and members of the public, because we all believe in the Nolan principles of openness and transparency, and we're concerned about the secrecy surrounding this very important issue as far as the City Council is concerned. Whilst everybody understands and accepts the need to have privacy and confidentiality with regard to commercial aspects, the general principle and options open to elected members, which they need to be able to be discussed and scrutinised in an open and public way, are being denied to councillors, and there are concerns raised. So I think it's only right and proper, as the chair of this committee, that I raise these concerns, and I initially will invite Emily, before I take a possible vote on this, whether we have all of the meeting or part of the meeting in private, to explain the concept and why the need for privacy. So if you could give us 5 minutes of your time, Emily, to talk to those, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, when a report is brought to me for consideration, I weigh up the risk of having a fully confidential report against the risk of disclosure of confidential information. Having consulted with our advisors who have been key in drafting this report and the documents which accompany it, I have reached the conclusion that the risk to the Council posed by disclosure of this report and its contents outweighs the benefit of disclosure at this current time. I appreciate that was frustrating for members, and obviously, as we are still in open session, I am limited in what I can say in explaining that basis. However, as the monitoring officer, I have considered this report carefully, the documents that accompany it in the appendices, and I am of the view and will advise members that to discuss any of the contents of this report other than in closed session would damage the Council's commercial confidentiality, its interest in this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Emily. I think the concerns are because the impact of the decision we have on communities and the financial implications of the Council are quite great. And I know one or two councillors wish to come in, and I'll allow them, but I think it's beholden on me to put it to the elected members whether they feel that all or part of this meeting should be in private, or at least part of it should be in public. John, you wish to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I appreciate the report as it is, because there's so much commercially sensitive information there. I suppose it's got to be held in private, but why isn't there a report that could be part of it, sanitised, or whatever? Take the important commercial stuff out of it and give a report alongside it that the press and public could have access to. That's what I don't understand. It just seems complete secrecy.
I mean, part of I hope that senior officers will understand that we feel that this is just a rubber stamping exercise and that we're not going to be able to give it proper scrutiny. I don't know if it's unusual that we have two political groups, none of which are even in attendance. Is that because they don't want to be associated with the secrecy concerning this document, or is it because they already know that it will just be passed through and go to Cabinet without proper scrutiny? These are the sorts of things that the public, not just elected members, are concerned about. So it's up to members. Are you happy to proceed in the... yes, Emily?
Chair, just to remind you that when you'll be asking to pass the resolution, at that point there will be a vote of the members of committee at that point. So it may be that you wish to read the recommendation to committee and then allow that vote, because essentially there has to be a vote to pass the resolution to move into exempt. If it's okay with you, Chair, I can address the point about the lack of a public report, if that would be helpful. So obviously, and it is difficult to address, but obviously I did consider that as the monitoring officer, but it felt that any report that was sanitised, given the nature of the decision being taken, which is so reliant on the appendices, which have there is no choice around those appendices but for them to remain fully confidential, that any report that is so intrinsically linked to the content of those appendices that was provided for the public would almost have no sense to it, because it would have no context at all. And therefore, in my view, a report that has no context, it's very difficult to explain to the public, because we can't answer questions on it without referring to information that's confidential. So therefore, in my view, in this instant, it wasn't possible to draft a separate public report. I definitely take that on board from members of committee, and wherever possible, we would produce a public report if that would make sense when published.
Some of the questions, Emily, and I don't know if you can answer them in this open meeting, is that how can we make a decision to repair and reopen when we don't know or even have an update about the legal case?
You're straying into the confidential content of the report there.
These are some of the pertinent issues that members, sort of when we're making such an important decision on behalf of the electorate of Derby, we need to be able to debate in an open and democratic way, according to the Nolan principles. Lucy and then Hardiel.
I would also very much like to have had a public report that at least said something, even if it's only explaining that we can't say very much. Because I just think, in principle, it's a good thing to have something there. But I wondered whether we were able to talk about the climate impact assessment that has been done for this. Are we allowed to talk in any way about that one document, which is not, I don't think, commercial in any way?
Okay, I'll take a couple of questions, and then, so you're talking about the impact, and Hardiel, and then Mike. Hardiel.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, I agree with everybody else in terms of the unsatisfactory nature of not being able to have a public report, although recognising that commercial sensitivity we need to protect as much as possible. That's always the case, and we understand that in terms of confidentiality with the public, but not to have anything in the public domain doesn't feel right, and we need to find a way of doing that. And I'm not sure if that's been discussed by the cabinet and senior officers, what could be done. For example, the reasons for choosing one or the other, and these sort of things. What is it that we could have done to make it more of a public information giving statement rather than doing this behind closed doors?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I wanted just to, I understand the frustration that members have around this, but I think I need to make the point that the council is a legal entity. It employs a monitoring officer who is in charge of making the decisions around the governance position of the authority and protecting its interests from a legal point of view. That person is clearly vested with the power to make that decision and to judge all of those implications around that decision. Our multiple has made that decision based on the risks around this report, and to add to that sort of legal position, if you like, it is about the intrinsic connection between all of the things in the report and the appendices. It's very difficult to discuss this issue without straying into areas that would then put us into a commercially difficult position, and that's the judgment that's been made. That's the advice that you're being given by your officers, and I'd recommend that members take it.
It's up to councillors now. Do you wish to proceed to a vote, to have this discussed in public or part of it in public, or do you simply wish to proceed reluctantly in the private session?
Chair, I'd propose that I need to read through the wording that I've got here, Chair.
Okay.
Before we go to the vote. So, members, Chair, this is to consider a resolution to exclude the press and public during consideration of the following item. That under Section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting during discussion of the following item on the grounds that it involves a likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, and that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Stephen. So, members, John, do you want to come in?
Yeah, Chair, it's sort of Hobson's choice, isn't it? I mean, if we vote to have a public meeting, there's no meeting in effect. So I suppose we have to exclude the press and public.
Okay, I understand where you're coming from, John. It seems that the meeting's saying very reluctantly indeed, we'll proceed, but none of us are happy at all about being party to what is regarded as many as unnecessary secrecy and not being as open and transparent and have the proper and due scrutiny that we'd wish. Mike, and then we'll proceed. Mike.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I too am unhappy. But having spent a lot of time reading this report, and as people know, I've got a technical background, and I can see that it would be extremely difficult to... it would be extremely difficult to... what's the word? You could produce a very anodyne summary, but as Lucy said, it wouldn't tell you very much. But I would be in favour of doing that if it helps the situation. But I think otherwise we should proceed in confidence.
It seems that members reluctantly have a fait accompli that we must proceed because...
Chair, could I get a show of hands of all those in favour then of excluding the press and public for the record? That's 4 in favour and any against? None against, thank you, Chair.
Can you read out and make sure that we are then in